Those who work in insurance claims, what's your best you've got to be kidding me story? I've worked in claims related areas for 10 years. I've done claim processing on a wide range of policies, from domestic home and contents through to motor fleet, commercial liability, wheat crop, livestock, fidelity, etc. I'm now a loss adjuster, insurance assessor, and boy, have I seen some things. Probably the strangest one I ever saw was a burglary claim. The homeowners had rented their 500-acre property out to tenants, and included in the lease was a shed full of equipment, tractors, harvesters, work tools, etc. Basically everything you need to run a farm was in that shed. At the end of the lease they took back over the farm and found the shed not only empty, but missing. The concrete slab was still there, but nothing else was. A claim was lodged, a police report was made, and the customer got everything replaced. However, where it gets strange is the phone call I got 8 months later. The customer went to turn on their tap one day and no water came out. They went outside and their pump was working, but was sucking nothing up, meaning there was a blockage somewhere. The customer went through all the motions, the final step being get in the dam with scuba gear. The dam was something 4,900,000 L, so a fairly big dam. And see what's blocking the pipe, and found that the tenant had disassembled the shed and put all of it, including the contents of the shed, into the dam. We then helped the customer empty the dam and move everything to auction to be sold off. The profit went back to the insurer to pay for claims costs. Currently work in home claims lodgement. My favorite has got to be a call I received a few months ago. Around a decade ago, this lady took her ring into a jeweler's. One of the claws holding the stone was bent out and she wanted to get it repaired. Since the job was small, the jeweler kept the ring overnight, performed the repair and didn't charge the woman for the job when she came back to pick it up. Now, back to the present day, lady takes her ring into a different place to get it valued. Turns out the stone is a cubic zirconia. The original jeweler swapped it out overnight, didn't charge her, so there'd be no paper trail, and had since closed shop. Of course, I always wondered whether the ring was ever a diamond. I have worked in car insurance claims for a good few years now. The funniest was a colleague took a call where the customer walked out of his front door to find a bull having sex with his car. The customer advised that he let the bull finish. Not claims, but here is one I remember from working the front desk at a local agency. This one lady had over 50 towing and labor claims within a 6-month period. She would drive until she ran out of gas and then call the tow number. They would come out and give her a few gallons of gas. Then she would drive until she ran out of gas and call the number again. Rinse and repeat. After 6 months they permanently banned her from using that option. She also used to have her bill done as an automatic withdrawal. It would save her $5 on her bills if it was automatically taken out, but she would never have the money in her account, which would cause her bank to hit her with a $35 non-sufficient funds fee. Then she would call us and raise heck, trying to get us to pay the fee. I hated that woman and dreaded having to deal with her. I work in homeowners claims. Here are a few I've got right now. 1. The lightning caused my refrigerator to go out, and I lost $4,500 worth of penicillin and 287 pounds of steaks. My doctor retired and the pharmacy went out of business, and I don't keep receipts. Oh, and I threw out the steaks. I suppose I'd settle for $2,500. 2. The wind blew my $1,000 iron patio set completely out of the yard. We never found it. You want me to go looking for it? I only have one ARM. 3. Yeah, my garbage disposal stopped working. I don't know what's wrong with it. 4. I picked up a lady friend from the thrift store. When we got back she drugged me and robbed my apartment. Oh, and she found all my receipts and took them too. These are just a few off the top of my head. I've been doing this for years though. I've got tons. Worked in IT at an insurance company. Claim that made the rounds was a homeowner's policy where a guest filed a claim against the homeowner's policy because she caught gonorrhea from his sex toys. Claim was denied. I don't work insurance claims, but work IT for an insurance company and overheard someone talking about a time when they worked in the call center and their co-worker was on the line and the call went, "Yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. No ma'am, the train always has the right of way. But the right hand rule." Medical life insurance. My co-worker was offering orientations. An old lady stood up from the crowd and dropped dead. If she would have just waited an hour, maybe she would have signed up. Claims adjuster here. We once had a claim for a home robbery. This couple was on vacation and their 45-year-old son was house sitting. He had a heart attack on the couch in the living room, and while he was dead, someone broke in and robbed the place completely clean. He was dead for 2 weeks before the parents came home and found his decomposing body, in that their entire house had been gutted. Super sad. On a funnier note, we had a house fire claim, so the insureds gave us a spreadsheet with everything they were claiming and replacement prices. This couple had thousands of dollars in sex toys, and they even put on Playboys and Penthouse magazines that were 10 years old and worthless with the depreciation. I mean, I get why you'd want to claim that since it's good money, but dang was it hard to look them in the eye knowing how kinky they were. One of my favorites. An insured hit a telephone pole, and when the police arrived, he was arrested for DUI. According to him, that was a bull's charge because he hadn't been drinking before the accident. You see, after the accident, a good Samaritan stopped to see if he was okay. The insured told this stranger that he was okay, but he was thirsty. All the stranger had was some beers, so he gave them to the insured and left. That's why he had alcohol in his system when the cops showed up. I had a buddy that kept a 6-pack in his trunk. The express purpose was to start chugging this when cops show up if he ever got into a drunk driving accident. It was his belief they couldn't prove he was drunk before the accident or after downing a 6-pack in front of them, so the DUI wouldn't stick. I don't know if this is possible, but I always called him an idiot about it. Group sex. 7th person joined the festivities. Bed broke. Acceptable claim as accidental damage. Also had an auto error in the time putting a customer on hold we picked up. Call being recorded and reviewed in a quality session. The fact he was talking to his wife about he was lying to the insurance company about the accident. Fraud prosecution happened with that one. Back in the day, I was a claims clerk coordinator for a big truck company. You know that number you see on the back of big trucks. Call 800 blah blah. That went to my small department. We compiled those into accident claims, work comp reports, and other things. This one night I get a call from a trucker who said he wanted to make a work comp report. Okay, sure, routine thing. Glad to try to help out someone who may be hurt and needs it. First question, are you okay? Do you need me to get you to a hospital? Nah, nothing like that. Okay, so what's your injury? Where and how did it happen? It was in my truck. I got it from a lot lizard, truck stop prostitute. This poor guy was trying to make it a work comp claim so he could go to the doctor for his STD after his dispatcher gave him heck about wanting to go to the doctor. Truck drivers are quite reliable for you've got to be kidding moments. There was a truck completely wrecked. Thankfully no injuries, due to a bee in the cab. There was a driver who called after a pedestrian literally walked himself under the tires to commit suicide. There was one driver who hit a bridge and said, "I didn't think they were serious about the posted height of the bridge." There was a huge 100+ vehicle crash due to fog a few miles from one of our terminals where we had at least 7 of our trucks in one wreck. There was a driver who was on a high security, multi-million-dollar load who just casually left his truck unlocked while he went in for a pee, etc., etc. That said, probably 3/4 of all accidents were caused by the smaller vehicle if there were multiple vehicles involved. TLDR. Truck driver calls to try to claim STD as work comp. I was making a claim a couple of years ago when I found my car one morning with a huge dent on the bonnet. It cracked the servo fluid reservoir underneath, so storing didn't work either. I was parked next to a 10-story building and it looked like someone dropped something on it. Called the cops, they questioned everyone. Turns out a resident's fat cat jumped off from the window of floor 9 and landed on my car. The poor fella broke a leg but survived and ran off. Now when I made a claim at the car owner's insurance company, I had to talk to dozens of people because they wouldn't believe what happened. It didn't really help either that the police report had a sketch of the incident on it, a drawing of a falling cat. Sounds like someone in the force was having a slow day, haha. My dad's a construction litigation lawyer, but close enough for this. There was a couple that had a ton of damage done to their house by a sinkhole, but they were claiming a ton of luxury items such as jewelry, fur coats, etc. that were all lost. And here's the best part, They always paid for these items in cash and they always bought duplicates. Didn't take the forensic accountant very long to figure that one out. A woman claimed that her windows were defective because they were leaking. It was condensation. A guy got a splinter walking over some boards that were covering a worksite. Called an ambulance for himself. Ended up getting like $400 from the contractor, but it didn't cover his costs. Using a throwaway in case our claimant is a redditor. Retail. We had a claim for injury for someone that was injured by our sink fixture magically ripping itself out of the wall and falling on our claimant causing serious injury. An index search revealed similar claims at several other companies, spread out over the past few years. It turns out, our claimant seems to have very bad luck with restroom fixtures falling apart and injuring her. Another company who dealt with this claimant in the past was cooperative in sharing their investigation. Turns out our claimant has a tendency to not be alone in the restroom. Needless to say, it had been determined that claimant has a pattern of going into public restrooms to have sex. TLDR claimant was doing in the nasty in our bathroom so hard that the sink was torn off the wall. Claim was filed for injury based on the defective design of our bathroom fixture. Usually the "you've got to be kidding me" claims are ones where I wonder how someone thought they would never get caught filing a fraudulent claim. A favorite of mine is a guy who took his giant, customized truck mudding while drinking, and against the advice of everyone he was with, drove it into a creek to, well, I'm not really sure why. His truck got stuck, the water levels rose, and he decided to just report the truck stolen. He didn't think about the fact that there were tons of witnesses and that he posted it on his Facebook. Another personal favorite was a man with supposedly $120K worth of gems and diamonds on his old Bentley with no proof of them ever being there besides the music video on YouTube that he swore was of his car. Most of the others are run-of-the-mill fraud, starting a policy and filing a claim immediately for damages that occurred before it was in force. Sometimes already having received a payout from another company. Also, people with handwritten receipts for huge sums of money. Don't think we believe you, and don't have your lawyer send me a poorly written email from a fake law office from a Gmail account. I had a guy who was repped by an attorney with an AOL email address. I was like, call me when you're serious. A 16-year-old kid got some craptastic Mustang which needed a paint job. He got a quote and realized, hey, it's kind of expensive. Ever so conveniently his car was keyed. They managed to damage every single panel while it was parked in a McDonald's parking lot during the supper rush. Like all other Ask Reddit threads, I don't work in insurance claims, but I was in the Air Force and a friend co-worker had the registration expire on his car. Driving a car on base without proper tags usually results in paperwork and a stern talking to by supervision. Not a good situation. So until he could afford to pay for it, he would drive to my house and park his car and I would give him a lift into work. For some reason, one day he parked right where my car usually turns into as I back out. Edit. This was beside my driveway, not out in the road. I didn't notice. I ended up backing into his car while he was in the passenger seat. Crunch. He had his mouth open while it was happening, but all that came out was an incoherent sputtering. We also had the same insurance company. Insurance person. So let me get this straight. You were a passenger in the vehicle that hit your parked vehicle? Are you aware that insurance fraud is a crime? Are you sure this is the story you want to go with? Fun times. Not necessarily a weird claim, but I work in centralized services for an insurance company and we have a guy who we call the breather. He calls around, waits until a lady picks up and proceeds to get his jollies off on the phone. He then calls for about an hour. Of course we all disconnect on him. We were finally able to get his number because of an updated voice system and turns out he's some fancy lawyer. Real creeper. Not in insurance, but we had a guy do that at my last job. Nicknamed the masturbator, and he would call and state I'm masturbating and giggle. He was doing it from public phones. Didn't work insurance claims, but I did fill out reports for car accidents for a car sharing company. My favorite was this Asian guy who called in. I could hardly understand what he was saying because his accent was so thick and his English so poor. I was already able to tell that he was a new member from his account page, and I saw that it was his first reservation. 2. My phone line told me that he called in through the accident prompt. I could barely make out him saying hit wall when he thought it might be a good idea to hand the phone to his passenger. First reservation. Within hours of being approved as a member, which requires a clean record from an accident background check, within minutes of picking up his car, and this guy doesn't even make it out of the parking garage without scraping the entire length of the car against the wall of the garage. He didn't have the damage fee waiver either. We closed his account and he got to pay a hefty fee. Felt bad for him, but good lord, how do you manage to do that? I was the one giving the unbelievable story. Was driving some mates back from a concert and went over a drain in the road, and the front right suspension of my car collapsed. Frick, was kinda drivable, so I limped it back home. Remembered I had comprehensive, so called up my insurer and they assumed I was drunk and spent the good part of 2 months trying to get me to either admit it, prove I wasn't, or drop the claim. End result was they paid out. Very frustrating. Even if you were drunk, they'd still have to pay it. Sure, they'd add a note to your file to make your rates fly through THR roof, but they definitely have to pay it. Worked in claims for a spell. Some dude was taking bong hits on the other end. I let him finish, but I laughed a lot. He actually was filing a claim because he ran into his mailbox after brunch. Not an insurance worker, but just 2 days ago I had a coworker tell me how she hit someone while backing out of her driveway and it was totally his fault because he was stopped at a stop sign to eat his breakfast. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever you say. Even if he was eating, I'm not sure how that puts him at fault for you hitting a stationary vehicle. I heard a story, not sure if it's true or not. There was a hailstorm that damaged a bunch of houses. An insurance assessor was visiting a house and saw the neighbor standing on his roof hitting tiles with a hammer. What are you doing? None of your freaking business. So, he finished his assessment, checked his next appointment, which was next door. Would not surprise me in the least. I worked in claims for 2 years. The craziest one I heard was, our customer called in to report damage to their vehicle because a drunk driver hit a motorcyclist, killing him instantly. The drunk driver and the deceased were not customers of ours. Now why would our customer be calling in, you ask? Because our customer was in the opposite lane and the motorcyclist landed on our customer's car, damaging the windshield, damaging the paint and hood. Our customer was just minding their business. Another thing was that drunk driver drove a mile with the motorcycle under his car before police pulled him over and arrested him. It was one of the most ridiculous stories I'd ever heard. While I was collecting insurance information from an elderly man who just rear-ended me, thus taking off my bumper, he asked if he could give my phone number to his grandson. I said no, but still got a call a month later. GRR. Wingman Grandpa, bumping B and getting B. Have seen a guy come into Best Buy to get his cell phone replaced under the accidental protection. Apparently he had his cell phone in his shirt pocket while putting wood into a wood chipper and it fell out of his pocket into the machine. He brought in a baggie of sawdust cell phone dust. I don't think they replaced it. My family bought my cousin a portable DVD player to use while stationed in Iraq. It ended up being destroyed in a mortar attack. Best Buy replaced it with no questions asked. We bought the extra coverage. My wife works in property insurance. A story she tells was relayed to her by this guy who manned the helm during the Christmas holidays. It's the 23rd or something and he gets a call. This guy wants to insure a shipment of research monkeys. They were captured in Africa and were being sent to the US. The guy wanted to insure their travel. There's really no precedent for this. Nothing in the computer. Bosses are at home. And he doesn't want to turn down business. So he quotes it. A 5-monkey deductible. 5 monkeys have to die before the insurance kicked in. I guess the guy went for it. I always thought that would make a sweet band name. 5-monkey deductible. I once broke up a small fraud ring down south. Had a claim that was reported a family of 7 was struck by a hit and run driver. This particular state did not require the responsible party to be identified for the insurance carrier to provide uninsured motorists bodily injury coverage. I get statements from the husband, father and wife, mother, and no statements from the 5 children because they were all 10 or less. There was a witness as well. Good Samaritan that stopped and gave her info. Got her statement. All the statements are consistent. Husband and wife deny ever being in a prior claim. and both husband, wife and witness deny knowing each other prior to the accident. So now, as a good adjuster, I ran an ISO on all parties. I get pages of matches. Turns out husband and wife make their living off of phantom vehicle claims by filing UMB and MedPay claims for themselves and all 5 children on a roughly 4-month cycle. And, the witness in the claim I was handling, was a passenger in their vehicle in a loss about 8 months prior. They had at least 5 prior claims, each with different carriers, all big ones, prior to landing on my desk, a smaller, regional, high-risk carrier, and not of those other carriers bothered to check ISO, even though they all ran them through it. So, as an adjuster, this is the equivalent of a fatality in Mortal Kombat, the blowout victory over Michigan in college football, I had in my hands. The killshot on a disgusting scam where parents were using their children as pawns in a highly illegal insurance fraud, and honestly, potentially fricking up their kids' futures. So, I called the husband back, armed with my incredible bounty of knowledge, had him repeat his statement, slowly this time, and questioned him a little deeper on things I knew to be lies, not knowing the witness prior. Lulled him into a sense of security before blowing him up with his prior claim history and my company's decision to refer him to the NICB and contact the other carriers on his ISO, letting them know about his fraud and staged accidents. The silence on the other end was magical. I could hear what was left of his useless soul escaping and begging to be reincarnated into something more noble, like a maggot, or Iraq. TLDR. Caught a husband and wife using their children in phantom vehicle staged accident injury claims and got them reported to NICB and had 5 prior carriers they had defrauded pursuing prosecution. I don't work in insurance claims, but I think my insurance company had a "you've got to be kidding me" moment earlier this year. I live on acreage and our property now has 2 normal houses on it. Earlier in the year, we had just finished building our second house when we had a fire in it. Brand new house which we hadn't moved into yet, just filled with furniture and appliances. Toaster caught fire. The push down thingy had been held down by the appliance cupboard door and set the kitchen on fire. $200K insurance claim. Smoke damage through entire house. Ruined wooden floor from water putting out fire. Whole house needed to be painted. New kitchen needed with appliances etc etc. About 2 weeks before the fire, house had the repairs finished. The older existing house flooded. A pipe burst in the bathroom which emptied the contents of the house water tank into the house while everyone was at work. Whole house water damaged. You could almost hear the disbelief in my broker's voice when I phoned her to let her know my other house was now ruined. Sorry for any spelling errors, I'm on my mobile. Guy put down on his life insurance application that he did not drink and no mention that he was being repeatedly treated for alcoholism. Later on he gets heavily drunk and drowns. I got asked to look into it for the sales department as our company was repeatedly rejecting the claim for over a year and the beneficiaries would not go away. Later on it turned out that he mentioned in the application that he was taking a particular medication for a study, but the underwriter didn't bother to look up what it was. Turns out it is only for treatment of H or alcohol dependence, so under local laws he had disclosed a reasonable amount of information for it to be found out. 7-figure payout. Naltrexone. I've got a few. One is where we had a claim for theft outside of her home. This lady said she takes her jewelry everywhere she goes to avoid theft. All $20K of it. So she lodges a claim for theft where she had taken the jewelry and left it in her car while she was at a friend's party. She parked the car 3 blocks away in a park and left the window down. Also stolen was 2 iPads, 2 cameras, 2 iPods, and a handbag, which she didn't feel like bringing into the party. Craziest thing is when we declined her, it was overturned on some bull's technicality and we had to pay her the claim. Granddad worked as a claim adjuster for a fairly well-known company for years. One of the stories I can remember him telling is that shortly after Hurricane Camille, he and a few co-workers went down to Alabama as backup. He said that he didn't really know what to expect other than wind and water damage, so that was all that he expected. The supervisor handed him a shotgun and steel toe boots as soon as he got to the site, and told him that he ain't expected, asked, or wanted in any place first. They moved from house to house in teams, and there was a sort of point man that entered first. Granddad got the surprise of his life when he walked in the kitchen in one house, and there was a rattlesnake on the counter. I can ask for a few more later if you're interested. Get granddad on here. Oh god, one I can finally contribute to. I've worked in insurance claims since I graduated from college in 2010. Homeowners and auto. Currently a field adjuster. My co-worker had a claim where she claimed theft because little people were living in her attic and had a pulley system in her ventilation system. They were coming down through her vents and stealing things like burnt down candles, her adult diapers, coupons, etc., and were hoarding them in her attic. She wouldn't go in her attic because even though these people were small enough to fit in her vents, she was scared they would attack her. I also have had a few claims where people claimed their houses were haunted and wanted us to pay to have someone to come out and get the ghosts out. Also had a claim for bedbugs in which a guy lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment with 8 cats and 9 dogs and several other animals, hedgehogs, ferrets, etc., that he let roam around outside. He had no idea how he could have gotten bedbugs, despite his filthy lifestyle, and when I told him there was no coverage, he told me he was going to fight for his liberty and sue my company. I have many more stories. I'll check back later. She's not wrong. You don't frick with the wee people. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.